Daily Words of God. Understanding God's authority from the macro and micro perspectives. God's authority is unique. It is the characteristic expression of, and the special essence of, the identity of God Himself, such as is not possessed by any created or non-created being. Only the Creator possesses this kind of authority. That is to say, only the Creator, God the unique, is expressed in this way and has this essence. So why should we talk about God's authority? How is the authority of God Himself different from authority as man conceives of it in his mind? What is special about it? Why is it particularly significant to talk about it here? Each of you must carefully consider this issue. For most people, God's authority is a vague idea, one that requires a great deal of effort to understand, and any discussion of it is likely to be abstract. Therefore, there will invariably be a gap between the knowledge of God's authority that man is capable of possessing and the essence of God's authority. To bridge this gap, everyone must gradually come to know God's authority through the people, events, things, and various phenomena that are within the reach of humans and within their capacity to understand in their real lives. Though the phrase God's authority may seem unfathomable, God's authority is not at all abstract. He is present with man through every minute of man's life, leading him through every day. So, in real life, every person will necessarily see and experience the most tangible aspect of God's authority. This tangible aspect is proof enough that God's authority truly exists, and it fully allows one to recognize and to comprehend the fact that God possesses such authority. God created everything, and having created it, He has dominion over all things. In addition to having dominion over all things, He is in control of everything. What does this mean? The idea that God is in control of everything. How can it be explained? How does it apply to real life? How can understanding the fact that God is in control of everything lead to an understanding of His authority? From the very phrase, God is in control of everything, we should see that what God controls is not a portion of planets, nor a portion of creation, much less a portion of mankind, but everything. From the massive to the microscopic, from the visible to the invisible, from the stars of the cosmos to the living things on earth, as well as microorganisms that cannot be seen with the naked eye, and beings that exist in other forms. This is the precise definition of the everything that God is in control of. It is the scope of His authority, the extent of His sovereignty and rule. Before this humanity came into being, the cosmos, all the planets and all the stars in the heavens, already existed. On the macro level, these heavenly bodies have been orbiting regularly under God's control for their entire existence, however many years that has been. What planet goes where at what particular time? What planet performs what task and when? what planet revolves along what orbit, and when it disappears or is replaced. All these things proceed without the slightest error. The positions of the planets and the distances between them all follow strict patterns, all of which can be described by precise data. The paths along which they travel, the speed and patterns of their orbits, the times when they are in various positions, all of these can be quantified precisely and described by special laws. For eons, the planets have followed these laws without the slightest deviation. No power can change or disrupt their orbits or the patterns they follow. Because the special laws that govern their motion and the precise data that describe them are predestined by the Creator's authority, they obey these laws of their own accord, under the Creator's sovereignty and control. On the macro level, it is not hard for man to discover some patterns, some data, and some strange and unexplainable laws or phenomena. Though humanity does not admit that God exists, nor accept the fact that the Creator made and has dominion over everything, and moreover, does not recognize the existence of the Creator's authority, human scientists, astronomers, and physicists are nonetheless finding more and more that the existence of all things in the universe and the principles and patterns that dictate their movements are all governed and controlled by a vast and invisible dark energy. This fact compels man to confront and acknowledge that there is a mighty one in the midst of these patterns of movement, orchestrating everything. His power is extraordinary, and though no one can see his true face, he governs and controls everything at every moment. No man or force can reach beyond his sovereignty. Faced with this fact, man must recognize that the laws governing the existence of all things cannot be controlled by humans, cannot be changed by anyone. He must also admit that human beings cannot fully understand these laws, and they are not naturally occurring, but are dictated by a sovereign. These are all expressions of the authority of God that mankind can perceive on a macro level. On the micro level, all the mountains, rivers, lakes, seas, and land masses that man may behold on earth, all the seasons that he experiences, all the things that inhabit the earth, including plants, animals, microorganisms, and humans, are subject to God's sovereignty and control. Under God's sovereignty and control, all things come into being or disappear in accordance with His thoughts. Laws arise that govern their existence, and they grow and multiply in keeping with them. No human being or thing is above these laws. Why is this? The only answer is this: it is because of God's authority. Or to put it another way, it is because of God's thoughts and God's words, because of the personal actions of God Himself. This means that it is God's authority and God's mind that give rise to these laws, which shift and change according to His thoughts. And these shifts and changes all occur or fade away for the sake of His plan. Take epidemics, for example. They break out without warning. No one knows their origins or the exact reasons why they happen. and whenever an epidemic reaches a certain place, those who are doomed cannot escape calamity. Human science understands epidemics to be caused by the spread of vicious or harmful microbes, and their speed, range, and method of transmission cannot be predicted or controlled by human science. Though people resist epidemics by every means possible, they cannot control which people or animals are inevitably affected when epidemics break out. The only thing human beings can do is try to prevent them, resist them, and research them. But no one knows the root causes that explain the beginning or ending of any individual epidemic, and no one can control them. Faced with the rise and spread of an epidemic, the first measure humans take is to develop a vaccine. But often the epidemic dies out on its own before the vaccine is ready. Why do epidemics die out? Some say the germs have been brought under control, while others say they die out because of the change of seasons. As to whether these wild speculations are tenable, science can offer no explanation and can give no precise answer. Humanity must not only reckon with these speculations, but also with mankind's lack of understanding and fear of epidemics. No one knows, in the final analysis, why epidemics begin or why they end. Because humanity has faith only in science, relies entirely upon it, and does not recognize the Creator's authority or accept His sovereignty, they will never obtain an answer. Under God's sovereignty, all things are born, live, and perish because of His authority and His management. Some things come and go quietly, and man cannot tell where they came from or grasp the patterns they follow, much less understand the reasons why they come and go. Though man can see with his own eyes all that comes to pass among all things, and can hear it with his ears, and can experience it with his body, though it all has a bearing on man, and though man subconsciously grasps the relative unusualness, regularity, or even strangeness of the various phenomena, he still knows nothing about what lies behind them, which is the Creator's will and mind. There are many stories behind these phenomena, many hidden truths. Because man has wandered far from the Creator, and because he does not accept the fact that the Creator's authority governs all things, he will never know and comprehend everything that happens under the sovereignty of the Creator's authority. For the most part, God's control and sovereignty exceed the bounds of human imagination, of human knowledge, of human understanding, and of what human science can achieve. It is beyond the ken of created humanity. Some people say, since you have not witnessed God's sovereignty yourself, how can you believe everything is subject to His authority? Seeing is not always believing, and neither is it always recognizing and understanding. So where does belief come from? I can say with certainty, belief comes from the degree and depth of people's apprehension of and experience of the reality and root causes of things. If you believe that God exists, but you cannot recognize, much less perceive, the fact of God's control and God's sovereignty over all things, then in your heart you will never admit that God has this kind of authority and that God's authority is unique. You will never truly accept the Creator to be your Lord and your God.